What's that? Okay, morning, Nancy. Are you ready, John? Okay.
Recording in progress.
All right, we'll go ahead and start the Board of Commissioners meeting for Tuesday, March 7th. We'll start off with introductions in the room first. I'm Pat Malone, Commissioner.
Zano Giroux, Commissioner.
Joe Kirby, County Administrator.
Van Barney, County Council.
And in the room,
Good morning, Jared Nichols, Community Development Director for Benton.
Good morning, Mark Baker, Benton County resident.
Good morning, my name is Ashley. I'm the Executive Meeting for Employers and Benton County. Committed to Peace Administrative Specialist.
All you felt and resident.
okay,
Nancy Whitman, Benton County resident. Erica Milo, Twitter.
and those joining us online.
Nancy Wise, Commissioner.
Jeff Van Arsdale, Benton County Sheriff.
Sam Imperati, BCTT Facilitator.
April Holland, Health Department.
All right, good morning. Are there any announcements? Hearing none, we will move to review and approve our agenda. Any changes?
Chair, there are no changes to the agenda this morning.
Okay, we'll consider the agenda approved. Next up, comments from the public, and we have two people signed up. Mark Yeager, why don't you come up to the desk there?
Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Mark Yeager. I'm a resident of Benton County. I'm here today to raise public awareness regarding the current landfill franchise agreement between Benton County and Valley Landfills. That 20-year agreement was signed in December 2020 and has several key sections that cause Benton County residents concern. I could find no record of any public involvement in this process except the code-required public hearing that was held virtually on December 15th, 2020, just prior to the board's adoption. Not surprisingly, no one testified because no one knew about it. First, to talk about the agreement itself, sections 4C and 5B of the franchise agreement state that Valley Landfills intends to apply to expand the landfill south of Coffin Butte Road by 2024. Coincidentally, per the franchise agreement, the franchise fee monies paid to the county jump by over $1.4 million per year in 2024, and the host fee jumps by $1 per ton. The landfill receives more than 1 million tons of garbage a year. The staff reported to the Board of Commissioners that those increased revenues were dependent on Republic gaining approval from the county for an expansion of the landfill. The agreement also says that if the county does not approve the expansion request by 2025, the franchise fee revenue gets reduced by $1 million per year, and the host fee is reduced by 56 cents per ton. With these financial incentives built into an agreement signed by the Board of Commissioners, how can the public be assured that the Planning Commission and the Board of Commissioners will make an unbiased decision regarding expanding the landfill? Next, Section 6 of the agreement requires a $10 million pollution liability insurance policy designed to defend Valley Landfills and Benton County from environmental lawsuits. While the policy limit is very low, given the environmental risks at the landfill and costs of cleanup these days, it's better than nothing, I guess. However, the liability insurance requirement in this agreement has a 30-day notice escape clause. It states, and I quote, "If pollution liability insurance is not available or not available at a reasonable cost, franchisee will give the county notice of this event and the franchisee will not be in default of this agreement." This doesn't seem like any real financial protection for the county and its residents should there be environmental lawsuits. In sum, the franchise agreement language regarding financial incentives to approve an expansion south of Coffin Butte Road and the very weak pollution liability clauses are concerns for Benton County residents. Neither of these topics have been discussed as part of the Benton County Talks Trash work group effort, and they deserve meaningful public discussion regarding the future of the landfill. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. All right, next up, Paul Neatfield. And you have a maximum of 3 minutes. So.
Morning, my name is Paul Neatfeld. I'm a resident of North Benton County and served on the A1 subcommittee of the Solid Waste Process Work Group. I would like to make a few points regarding landfill revenue in the Benton County budget, particularly in regard to the upcoming 2023 to 2025 biennium. First, commissioners should be aware that the economics benefit cost charge under the Develop Common Understandings topic is not being addressed directly by the work group or its current subcommittees. Instead, the SMMP subcommittee is compiling an outline of benefit cost topics for suggested inclusion in the proposed future long-term sustainable material management plan effort. It seems likely that the BCTT final report will not offer any clear guidance on landfill surcharge revenue, even for the upcoming 23 to 25 budget cycle. Second, despite this deferral, accurate guidance for expected landfill surcharge revenue in the 23 to 25 biennium can be generated from the fee schedule contained in the 2020 landfill franchise agreement using the intake tonnage projections provided by the landfill operator as part of the solid waste process work group effort. Third, although the current landfill franchise agreement contains financial incentives for expansion approval, as Mr. Yeager has just noted, at the projected intake tonnage levels, the county will meet or exceed its expected landfill surcharge revenue for the 23 to 25 biennium without any expansion approval. Using a projected intake of 1.05 million tons per year, which is the midpoint of the two projections provided by the operator and is consistent with the actual intake levels for the past 2 years, the landfill surcharge revenue would be approximately $7.5 million for the 23 to 25 biennium, exceeding the expected figure of about 6.7 million derived from the chart on page 16 of the current budget book. Thus, Benton County landfill surcharge revenue goals for the coming biennium can be achieved without expansion of the landfill, and future bienniums would continue to see $7+ million surcharge revenue figures at this intake level without any expansion approval. I hope this information is helpful to the Benton County administration in your budget planning and in the consideration of any future landfill decisions. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Okay, thank you. All right, looks like we have 2 people that have signed up in the chat to testify. Same comment is you'll have up to 3 minutes. Debbie Palmer.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. Good morning. My name is Debbie Palmer, and my comment today is regarding the BCTT process and the final document you are supposed to be getting out of it. I want to preface my comment by saying I'm not trying to cause trouble here. I'm not trying to be a thorn in your side or throw a monkey wrench in the works. The truth is, I genuinely want what's best for this county, and I'm not alone in this sentiment. My concern is that I feel you are being led astray and can't stand by any longer without speaking up about it. Please do not authorize any more county tax dollars for Sam Imperati of ICM Resolutions. Insist that he complete his job within the budget you have already given him. You should not be compensating him additionally for his own poor planning. I'm worried that these endless subcommittee meetings are going to form the basis for an additional budget request. As it is, you, as in we the taxpayers, are already paying extra for these meetings because county staff are in every one of them. Do you have any idea how many meetings these subgroups have had so far? I'll tell you, the SMMP subcommittee has had 11 meetings to date. The size capacity subcommittee has had 14 meetings to date with 2 more scheduled. Their work is not done, and it is unknown how many more meetings Sam will set up for them. The past land use subcommittee takes top prize for having had 21 meetings so far, with 2 more scheduled. A casual glance at the BCTT webpage makes it look like they've only had 14 meetings by numbering several of them as 2-part, meeting 12 and 12A, etc. And by not numbering at all 3 joint meetings with the legal subcommittee, plus 1 with DEQ. That 21 meeting total also does not include 6 additional subcommittee meetings that were held. The legal issues subcommittee has had 14 meetings to date, not including those joint meetings with the past land use group. At least everyone on the legal subcommittee gets a paycheck for their time. And finally, the community education subcommittee has had 11 meetings to date. My point is, if Mr. Imperati goes over budget, that should be on his dime, not the county's. It's no skin off his nose to stretch this thing out as long as you continue to pay him to do so. Please bear in mind how unfairly the time burden of all these subcommittee meetings falls on the volunteers, especially those who are on more than one subcommittee. At your February 7 board meeting, Mr. Imperati said you would have a final coffee table ready document on March 24th. You were all smiles about this, taking his word for it. 2 weeks later, on the 21st, that deadline quietly slipped, and none of you even batted an eye. No pushback. Now it's looking like it's going to slip even more. Well, I'm asking you now to push back. I suspect that later on in today's meeting, Mr. Imperati is going to be either asking you for more money or setting the stage to ask you for more money in a future meeting. All I'm saying is, if he is unable to complete this task within the time frame he promised, at least insist he complete it within the budget you have already agreed upon. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, looks like one more person, Kate Harris. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you for your time today. I'm Kate Harris, a North Benton County resident. As a former Air Force pilot and evaluator with a civil engineering degree and master's of public administration, an Adair Village rental property owner and manager, and mother of 3 who attend school in Adair Village, I have spent years taking input from those under my responsibility to ensure health, safety, and quality of life. Many times each year, particularly in the winter months, we are affected both at our home and while attending school in Adair Village by an oppressive stench, not what is coming from the PRC, but one that affects our daily living and activities. It causes headaches, eye irritation, and throat burning, which limits our outdoor activities and often makes me concerned for the health and safety of the children and employees at the school transiting between classroom buildings and during outdoor recesses. It also brings my concern for the safety of the tenants under our responsibility and the growing population of Adair Village. As a county resident, I need to be able to bring these concerns to my representatives. The Disposal Site Advisory Council is a state-mandated body to address community issues. With DSAC being shut down during the trash talks process, I have lost my primary source of addressing concerns of the safety and livability of our resident landfill. I see this as a failure of local government to provide what is required per state law as a way to hold our landfill operator accountable to residents. Other complaint processes, such as the cumbersome DEQ odor complaint website, have proven to be ineffective at properly logging filed complaints and bringing about any action. I appeal to you to bring the trash talks process to a timely close without sending more of our hard-earned tax dollars to Sam and reconvening the DSAC SWAT committees so those of us living with daily impacts of landfill can rightfully address our concerns. It is your charge to take input from those to whom you are responsible and do what you can to ensure safety, health, and livability for your Benton County residents. Thank you very much for your efforts and your time today and with all of these very hard and difficult decisions and processes.
All right, thank you. Was there anybody else? Is anybody else showing up? Okay, thank you. All right, that concludes the comments from the public section of our meeting. Next up, we'll start the work session. COVID updates, April Holland.
Hi, good morning, commissioners. Good morning, Joe, and everyone present today. I've got your COVID-19 update for you today. So let's start with hospitalizations. Statewide, there were 232 individuals hospitalized with COVID-19 as of March 1st. This is a slight decrease from 2 weeks ago when there were 250 people hospitalized with COVID. And for perspective, hospitalizations across the state haven't dipped below 200 since May of 2022. And our last peak of hospitalizations was in last November when 370 individuals were hospitalized. As of yesterday, 194 people across the state were boarding in the hospital or waiting for an available hospital bed. It's about a 25% increase from 2 weeks ago when 153 individuals were awaiting hospital beds, but down from the peak of 355 at the end of the year last year. Reported COVID-19 case counts are currently low in Benton County and across most of the state. It's according to the CDC metrics and the information that we gather through our communicable disease program. With folks predominantly using rapid antigen tests at home, it's still estimated that only about 5% of COVID cases are reported. During the week of February 19th, the last full week of data that we have from OHA, we had a total of 64 reported cases. That's reduced compared to a couple weeks ago when we had 77 reported cases. And CDC reports our new COVID-19 hospital admissions at 4.5 per 100,000, and the percentage of staff beds that are in use by COVID patients at 2.9%. And if you remember, these are the two metrics used in combination with reported cases to determine the low, medium, and high community levels. And of course, we continue to look to additional data to help determine COVID-19 transmission activities. Last week, the testing positivity rate remained elevated at 14.5%, though down slightly from 16% a couple weeks ago. Several wastewater sampling sites, particularly in the Tri-Counties and region and some in Southern Oregon, are experiencing sustained increases in SARS-CoV-2 wastewater signals. However, Corvallis monitoring has been at a plateau after some strong activity in mid-February. Overall, we know that broader immunity helps to slow spread, and we know the safest way to achieve that immunity is through vaccination. Again, it's important for folks to get that bivalent booster if they haven't, as we know that is going to be what gives us the best protection against not only infection, but serious illness and death. It still stands at about 30% of Benton County residents have received a bivalent booster, including an impressive 83% of residents 65 and older. So folks might have questions about whether they need an additional bivalent booster at this time. It's really important that folks are up to date on the COVID-19 vaccination, but there are no recommendations at this time beyond that initial single bivalent dose. More to come on that as recommendations come together on what might be an annual COVID-19 vaccination. In addition to being vaccinated, we really encourage folks to continue to use tests when you're feeling unwell, to wear masks in crowded indoor spaces, especially if you have underlying conditions, to seek out spaces that have good ventilation. Stay home if you're sick, please. And if you do test positive for COVID, to consider getting assessed for those treatments, especially if you have underlying conditions. It can make a big difference. I have a couple pieces of news to share with you. Last Friday, OHA announced that Workers, patients, and visitors in healthcare settings will no longer be required to wear masks in those settings starting on April 3rd. Examples of healthcare settings include outpatient facilities such as medical clinics, behavioral health, physical therapy, occupational therapy, inpatient care facilities like hospitals and emergency departments, and long-term care facilities like nursing and memory care facilities, as well as pharmacies are all included in this. Now, OHA cited falling test positivity rates for the 3 respiratory viruses that had been circulating widely, influenza, RSV or respiratory syncytial virus, and SARS-CoV-2 or COVID-19. Those prompted the Executive Order 2224, which expired yesterday. And as you recall, that order offered our hospitals flexibility in providing care for the large number of patients that needed to be cared for simultaneously. And it started with the surge in pediatric cases. Just wanted to give that little bit of background. So people who are at risk for severe disease, who live with someone at higher risk, should still consider wearing masks in healthcare or any settings to better protect themselves and those most vulnerable around them. Some healthcare settings may continue to require masks even after that requirement from OHA is lifted. Masks remain an effective way to reduce transmission of respiratory viruses. People are recommended to wear masks when they're sick. And as I just mentioned, folks who are at risk of higher disease, who live with someone at higher risk, should be encouraged to continue to wear masks, both in healthcare settings and in crowded indoor settings. And from a public health perspective, I'd encourage individuals, whether provider, patient, or anyone, to wear a mask in those settings to reduce your risk. I don't have too much of an update on my other piece of news, which is the federal emergency declaration ending on May 11th. The Oregon Health Authority and ODHS, Department of Human Services, are working together and sharing information with us to prepare for these upcoming changes, and are really focused on preserving benefits for as many people as possible. So our primary role at this time has been sharing resources with community partners, and we await additional guidance on the future landscape of COVID-19 vaccination and testing in terms of funding and other supports for our communities. That's all I have for you today, and I'm happy to answer any questions you might have. Thanks.
Any questions for April? Okay, just a comment. I really appreciate these updates and just feel like we're in good hands and that you're paying attention to what's going on, and really appreciate you keeping us well informed on what's going on out there. So thank you. And I think I've mentioned before, it doesn't seem like it this week, but we're close to springtime and more outside activities. And so maybe at least for this, if COVID does have a season, maybe we're out of the heaviest part of the season. But really appreciate your tracking on this and your nice cheery reports to us. So thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. I'd be remiss not to give a shout out to our wonderful teams from communications to communicable disease and our wonderful public health officer and healthy communities teams and beyond. It definitely takes a village to keep an eye on all of this work, and I'm really proud of the work that everyone's doing. Thanks.
Definitely pass the thanks around to your team, because this has been a heroic effort, and they just kept going and going, and it's nice to have hopefully the worst part of it in the rear view mirror. So thank you. Yeah. Knock on wood. Is there any wood around? Oh, right. The gavel's wood. All right. Next up, update from Benton County Tox Trash Solid Waste Process Work Group. Darren Nichols. Good morning.
Good morning, Commissioners. Thank you for having us again this morning. Want to spend the first part of our time together walking through a proposed revised schedule. I want to take just a minute to walk through that. Sam, with your permission, I'll get us started, and with the understanding that you'll fill in the blanks if I miss something. Does that work for you?
You got a thumbs up.
Okay, thanks. So you'll see that this calendar picks up from last week and moves forward. Right now, we're right just in the middle of a big push of subcommittee meetings. So the subcommittees are working right now to revise and refine final areas of disagreement or agreement, as the case might be, on the findings and recommendations that will eventually come to this board. For the next month or so, through the end of March, you'll see that this week we plan to be at the Sustainability Town Hall, where we will present the process and also the outline for the Sustainable Materials Management Plan. That is one area where there is, I think at this point now, unanimous agreement about what should be in a Sustainable Materials Management Plan. So we're very pleased to be presenting that to the community later this week. Next week, a couple of things happen. One is the subcommittees will wrap up the draft 5 version of the findings and recommendations. That doesn't include the appendices. It's just the findings and recommendations, but those draft 5 version will be released. And we'll kick off a multi-channel communications blitz that will continue through the end of March. So this is we've done quite a bit of communication, but I want to say special thanks to Corey and Jonave and Sarah Sabiki for helping us tee up both radio, television, a mailer, and a podcast, as well as all of our various social media channels. Consistent communication about the project and about all of the remaining opportunities for public input. So speaking of that, next week will be the first next opportunity for the public to engage in Benton County Tox Trash through a public survey about the draft 5 findings and recommendations. So we really encourage members of the community and anyone who has an interest in this topic to participate in the survey, provide their feedback, especially tell us what's missing or what we've gotten wrong. We want to hear from folks to make sure that we're on track. That survey then will be wrapped into draft 6 and will feed into the remaining 2 work group meetings. So March 16th and March 23rd are the last 2 full work group meetings. So the work group will be reviewing both draft 5 and then the public comments as they prepare for the final push, and which includes the work of the subcommittees, contents of the final report, and then individual member statements. So if you remember, the way that we've teed this up is that any members of the work group who would like an opportunity to kind of put their voice in at the end will have a chance to do that. And together, all of that work and those comments from work group members will be rolled up into the final report. Following the final work group meeting on the 23rd, then there will be an opportunity for the subcommittees to take one final look at that final draft and kind of reflecting on the work group meetings, basically to clarify any remaining facts. Which leads us then to April 1st. And at that point, the work will be complete. So you'll see that on March 31st, work group members and subcommittee statements are due at noon. Those are the statements of individual work group members. And those will be packaged over the weekend and ready for a final contents only report to be delivered to the board and to the public on Monday, April 3rd. On Monday, April 4th, we had scheduled an open house basically to present the contents of the final report and also to kick off a public comment section, which we had envisioned lasting for at least a couple of weeks until April 18th, at which point in time we anticipated bringing back to you a polished version of that report for a formal presentation. I want to say a couple of things at this point. First of all, we've been trying to get this process compressed into as short a time as possible and still provide a reasonable amount of public comment. Having said that, there isn't a lot of time for the public to absorb what will eventually be, we anticipate, around 500 pages of background, findings, recommendations, individual member statements. So one alternative, if the board is interested, would be to use the open house on April 4th as an opportunity to thank the work group members for their many, many hours of service, to hear the contents of the report, and to begin what could be an extended period then of public comment if the board is interested in providing the public additional time to hear, receive, absorb, and then respond back with public comments. So hopefully that's clear. There's a couple of options here. One is to try to get the project in its entirety wrapped up by April 18th. The other would be to thank the work group on April 4th and then open an extended public comment period that would enable, frankly, really a better process, or at least more time for members of the public to provide feedback to you before you try to do anything with the materials. Sam, did I miss anything along the way there?
I know, the major themes are present. I do want to highlight that during the final two work group meetings here on the 16th and 23rd, there's an extended public comment period, and one at the beginning of the meeting and one after the dinner break. So we have an opportunity for people, depending on their work schedules, to attend. And that same thing will happen at the final meeting, extended public comment periods. Also, with regard to the work group statements that are due on the 31st, this also includes participants from the public who are on the subcommittees, not formal members of the work group, but the addition of the invitation to them. We're trying to make clear that both work group members and the subcommittee members can submit statements, and this will be open to current and any past members, both of the work group and the subcommittee. So they too will have an opportunity to submit their comments and put into the report for your consideration.
Yeah, thanks, Sam. So we have tried to get as much public comment opportunity into the last 4 to 6 weeks as possible. And I guess what we're asking the board is if you'd be open to the suggestion, there is an opportunity for you to receive the contents of the report and then let that be the opening for a more extended public comment period that could run basically for as long as you would like.
Any questions or comments for Darren?
Nancy. I've got one.
Okay.
I just want to share my support for extending a timeline for public input. This has been a long process, and my intention is not to lengthen the process, but to acknowledge that it has been a heavy lift and to give the public plenty of time to get into the details and be able to give their feedback in a meaningful way.
I have a question. I'm assuming that we'll take public comment in any extended period in any form that it comes in, whether it's a letter by mail, by email, et cetera. How is that going to be compiled? And will that take additional staff time? What's going to be the process? Will that just come directly to us as a board? I'm assuming that won't have any place in the final report itself. I'm just concerned about the, again, the additional workload, although I agree that it would be great to have additional time for people to truly absorb the material and comment.
Well, the first thing I'd say is what would be the most helpful for the board. And so please feel free to advise. What we've envisioned for that period is that it's an open comment for written comments responding to the final draft. So these comments would not be included in the report, but they would be bundled and presented to you at the time that the final work group report is presented. So that could be at some point, really whenever you feel like is the right time frame. I'm presuming that the board would like an opportunity to discuss the findings and recommendations, provide some initial direction, and maybe, task us with what the next steps should be coming out of this report. At that point in time, you could hold a hearing and ask people to come and testify, or you could have in front of you the packet of public comments that have come in over that period of time, and use that to inform how and what you focus on in the report. Obviously, there's a lot of information. You will want some time to absorb that, take it in, and think about what is appropriate for next steps. So that's how we envisioned the report. You'd have the contents of April 4th, and then at some point in the future, we'd collect all of the public comments that have come in response to that report, put those together, present that to you, and give you a chance to respond to those more formally. I hope that helps.
Yeah, I'm just thinking about the time and the process and the effect on staff and everything else. So that does make sense to me. If we did receive all those comments in a written fashion, whether by email or snail mail. My postal friends hate it when I say snail mail. And at least provide some summary of the types of comments so that it would be easier for both us to digest and then for the public to digest as well. And that summary compiled prior to any kind of a public hearing. I do think it would be probably a good idea to have that closure of a final public hearing before the board to allow community members to again absorb all of the material. So a 45-day comment period. I don't know, something in that realm.
Okay. Yeah, so I appreciate I appreciate you thinking about the staff workload. I would say looking at this calendar beginning the first week in April, our workload suddenly drops because of the number of subcommittee and work group meetings that we've been hosting and facilitating. So in some ways, beginning in April, we have some newfound staff capacity, and I think this is the kind of work that Daniel and Maren would welcome, an opportunity to collect those documents, put them together in some kind of an organized fashion, develop some themes to make it easier for you to understand what's there. Yeah, we'd be happy to help.
And the final polished version of the report is going to be compiled by staff, or is that a consultant role?
It will be, I believe, a combination of both. So the communications team or public information officer and an outside publisher, someone with experience making things look nice, will put that final content together with some photographs and into a format that is unique to the work group. One of the things we've talked about is the fact that this is certainly a Benton County sponsored project, but the work is really the work of the work group.
Mhm.
So I believe Corey is planning to get some outside help to do that kind of final polish and branding as the work of a community-led work group.
Okay.
And the way we've laid that out here is that would be available basically within a week after the contents are delivered. So Corey and his team weighed in there, gave us some input about how much time they think it would take for them to turn this around. So there wouldn't be a formal delivery of that polished version. At some point when it's ready, the contents only, the PDF would be replaced with the polished document on our website.
And then it would be that document that would be put out for the review period.
Well, I think the review, well, we could do this however you would like. The review period really can begin as soon as the contents are delivered. That content version won't change. It will just be the look and feel of the.
Although it might be a lot easier to get consistent comments that are sortable by staff if there's only one version of the document being reviewed by the public.
Sure.
Otherwise, you'll end up people pointing at different page numbers for the same content, and I think that could be pretty confusing. So
Sure.
and I'm hoping that it will be important that the document be easily searchable and so that people can follow through from the main narrative into the appendices that are relevant and see the information behind it. So assuming that there will be a digital version of that final polished document as well that has the same pagination.
Yeah. Thank you. So in that case, the public comment period could open on the 11th and extend for
The 45-day
45 days or so. Okay.
So can I just add something? Could we briefly just discuss the merits between, let's say, 45 days or versus 60 days? I mean, do commissioners have any thoughts on one versus the other?
Well, I just want to make sure I understand the calendar. So you're not suggesting any changes through April 4th. That the work group has its final two meetings in the subgroups, and so that April 4th, heavy lifting of the work group is wrapped up, and then what you're talking about is lengthening the comment period. The public comment period.
Yeah, that's
So
correct.
the work group is finished. What we're what we're talking about is length of time that the public has to see, learn. I mean, I'm sure many members of the community don't really know that this is going on, and so it will take. I was concerned about the 10-day public comment period, that was way too short, just because some people are following this closely. I think most members of the community, this may be new news, and it's important for them for us to hear their voices and give them time to find out that this is available, and then read as much of it as they want to, and it's sounds like it'll be a considerable document. So I think that lends itself to again a longer comment period, and I would I guess from April 4th, I would, to your question, Nancy, suggest 60 days. That seems like a familiar number, and I'm not wedded to that, but a decent length of time so that people are made aware of this project and that they have time to sort through as much of it as they would want. So what I guess, Nancy, you were going over the length of the public comment period.
Yeah, I just, either could be fine. I just wanted to propose having a conversation about it. So I don't know if Commissioner Ojero has thoughts or if staff has any opinions they would like to share.
Well, my concern with making it too long is that there's also an opportunity for public interest to wane and for people to just, have this disappear from their horizon. And we don't want that either. We also don't want to get too far out because we still need to take the next step and put together an RFP for a sustainable materials management plan. So it's not like there's zero pressure whatsoever. I'd prefer that slightly shorter period. If we start April 11th and go for 45 days, that would make me more comfortable.
And can I be reminded, 45 days puts us at what day for the closing?
30
Well,
days, April 11th, May 11th, and then another 15 days after May 11th makes it
May 26th.
May 26th,
Yeah.
Thank you.
give or take a day.
I
That's
think,
fine.
yeah, either of those are reasonable. I think if we gave people through the end of May to comment, that, it gets us to Memorial Day, usually at that point. And I am sensitive to the public interest waning. I think we want to capture this while there is attention. One nice thing, and to Commissioner Malone's comment a minute ago about the many people who may not have heard about this, my guess is because of the communications blitz that goes out between March 15th and March 29th, many more people will become aware of this, and especially they'll become aware of their opportunity to comment beginning on April 4th or April 11th. And so at that point, we hope to see quite a bit more interest and capture that, but we don't want to lose that if we go beyond the end of May. So hopefully that's helpful.
Mine was a general comment. We work hard at getting, no matter what the topic is, work hard at getting the word out. And then you run into quite a few community members that have never heard of what you're talking about. And so I think that's my concern is, and I appreciate the comments of working hard to get the word out towards the end of March.
I guess so. Oh, sorry, Pat.
Oh, just and that fits in with the April 4th open house to try to put a spotlight on that. Go ahead, Nancy.
Thank you. I think, so what if we just say it closes at the end of May, and that is kind of a cleaner, it's easier for people to remember. I have to get my stuff in by the end of May versus, was it the 21st, the 25th? What day was that?
Yeah, I think that makes sense. Look at the calendar and pick a day in there.
May 26th is a Friday. So the 45 days, if we started on the 11th, is a Friday. The 31st is a Wednesday, the Wednesday after Memorial Day. So I guess the pros and cons there is you give people their Memorial Day weekend, or you let them have the Memorial Day weekend to pull together their final comments. I think it's either way you'd like it.
Well, and so that can be easy to remember, get your comments in before Memorial Day or the weekend, but so it'd be a Friday, correct? It'd be a business day.
May 26th is a business day. I'm just turning around to look at Corey Grogan for a moment to make sure that we're not running afoul of the communications that may already have gone out. So Corey, one thing that the commissioners are talking about is the need to, or the option to start the public comment period on April 11th after the coffee table ready version of the report is out, basically so that there's a consistency of comments using the same pagination and same report organization. If we start the public comment period on April 11th, is that
How long would the comment period?
45 days or until May 26th, I think is what I'm hearing.
Okay, yeah, I think that should work. I think we didn't want to coordinate some folks, just to double check. But you know, I'll got something today.
Is that consistent with the communication that we've already released?
Is that consistent with the communication that we've already used?
Yes.
Yeah, we haven't specified the end for the public comment period. We just let folks know that it's available. Push, that feedback, so that as far as the end of the
Okay, thanks, Corey.
Chairman Malone, I do have a question for Darren, and it relates to the date of April 3rd. When you look at April 3rd, it indicates that's the final report to the board and the public. Just pointing out that I think that means that that's being published that day. That's not a special meeting with the board on that day, or that's being presented.
That's correct. The report will be made available on April 3rd. There won't be a meeting or release. There will, however, be the open house on April 4th. And that's where we anticipate, doing a high level walkthrough of what's in the contents of the report, reminding folks again of what the process is and how to comment. And I think most importantly there on April 4th is where the board has an opportunity to thank the work group members for their service. A few of these folks are going to want to stay involved, and that's great. A few of them, I think, would like to be let off the hook, and this will give them some closure, and it give the board a chance to thank them for the hours and hours of time they've put into it. So,
Okay, do you have what you need on this?
let me just quickly recap what I think we're going to do. We're going to keep working at pace through the end of March, the way we've laid out here. Then on April 4th, we would invite and encourage the board to join the work group for an open house. And I think that should be an in-person open house with a virtual option, so that you get a chance to thank the work group, hear the preliminary findings and recommendations, and begin the public comment period in earnest on the 11th, after the final paginated version of the report has been released. That will then start a 45-day, or I think it's maybe a 47-day now, comment period through May 26th. And that will probably be via email or USPS or FedEx or Amazon or UPS. So people can get their comments to us any way they like by May 26th, and then we will collect those, collate them, and schedule a board hearing on this topic, which would then be sometime in early to mid-June. Does that sound okay?
Yeah, I think that's a stronger calendar.
Okay, thank you.
And I appreciate through this whole process, it's been trying to hurry up and get the work done as quickly as possible. But I think now that we can see that fairly soon the work will have wrapped up, give us time to digest.
Yeah. Which was the purpose.
Yeah. Yeah, my only concern is just that we not lose sight of the next steps.
I don't think that will happen, but I appreciate the reminder. This is just the bridge to the real work. And the real work is, the good news is on that, next steps, the sustainable material management plan, the public communications piece. There's been a lot of really constructive, helpful, positive, and I would say consensus-based work there. Where the remaining points of disagreement is in how we characterize the history, what's happened in the past, and some of the legal issues, which it probably shouldn't be a surprise, trying to resurrect history in a group fashion is difficult, but valuable.
Mhm.
And then the legal issues are important issues that we need to understand better as we go forward. But in terms of the plan for the future and what should be in that plan, there has been really good discussion and thoughtful consensus really from the start. So, yeah.
All right. Anything else on this topic? If not, we'll move on to Benton County Tax Trace Work Group Project Budget Update. Oh,
Yeah, thank you. So based on what we've just walked through, I think we'll want to incorporate this into a final budget estimate to make sure we incorporate that. I don't anticipate that to change too much, but I want to address a couple of things. First of all, you heard earlier some concerns about the budget and the process. I just want to say that most of that has been driven by the work group members themselves, either their interest and desire to really get into these topics and understand them fully. We have one work group member who is planning a trip to Eugene to personally go through 10 boxes of records at the DEQ office there. I just can't overstate the level of commitment of these community member efforts. So we have done our best to accommodate those interests and efforts as they're needed to get to agreement. The work group meetings themselves, that schedule has been driven primarily by the work group members. The ICM team has done a good job of facilitating. Our staff has also provided a tremendous amount of support, but the length of time has really been driven by the work groups and the subcommittees themselves. So I understand that has extended the timeframe. There has been some continued resistance to the process, which has slowed things down. It's also given us pause to think and be careful about how we take our steps, but that has led to an extension of time in the process. The result is that we, as you recall, came to you and asked for an additional budget extension. Our initial estimates, frankly, were I think very optimistic, and we've revised those, and now we are revising those again. We hit that extended budget amount sometime back in February, and so we're now into we're past the budget point. I think the project needs to continue. It needs to get wrapped up, and it needs to happen as soon as it can. Having said that, we anticipate coming back to you with kind of a final request to get this over the finish line. Without knowing exactly what that dollar amount is, I want to give Sam a chance to talk a little bit about that, but I just wanted to explain a little bit the context. And I understand some members of the public have been, felt like this has gone too long. Others have feel like it hasn't been long enough. And we've been trying to strike that balance and giving people a voice as they've asked for it. I wouldn't say that we've done it perfectly. I don't want to pretend that at all. This is hard work, but we have been giving as much opportunity as people want to, get into the weeds that they care about and to share that not just with us, but eventually with you. And I think that has been, for the most part, very successful. Sam, would you like to share anything with the board about the budget?
Well, after this meeting, now that we have a good outline of the final steps in the process, I will be able to put pencil to paper and do the best job I can in projecting a budget. This was never a bid project where there was an agreement that the work would be done for X number of dollars. It was always on a budget-based basis, subject to negotiation and your approval. I have lots of thoughts and feelings surrounding some of the public feedback that has come my way. I choose to simply state that at the end of the day, you will see the numerous findings and numerous recommendations and common understandings that prior to this process did not exist and created a lot of disagreement and rancor in the community. And while what's going forward when Republic drops its next CUP expansion request is not going to be easy, and this process will not have solved all of those issues that existed last time, as I said in the assessment. I believe that when you look at the findings and recommendations, you will see that many members of the community have in fact come together to look at what's in the best interest of Benton County residents. And you will see some robust findings and recommendations, and the value for the time and money spent will put this in a perspective and on a path forward that for the past 50 years has not happened. And so I ask you to look at the value add and judge the process, and me if you'd like accordingly. Thank you.
Can I add something?
Please.
I guess I would just like to share, we did have comment that, we seemed unfazed by extending the timeline. And I guess I'll just explain a little bit about it. From the beginning, I have expected that this would be extended. I thought that the timelines were very, optimistic. And in my experience as a Corvallis City Councilor, going through projects like the ICANN 2040 Vision and Climate Action Plan and several others, it's just how it goes. Things pop up and you have to kind of pivot. And my belief is that it's better to take the time to do something right than to rush it. And so I do understand concerns and I take those to heart, but I do think that extending it when needed has been okay.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner Wise. At the start of the project, I think we understood that there may have been more urgency than there actually was to get the work done while we had this window of opportunity for open public dialogue with the board. And it turns out we have a little bit more time, which we're very grateful for. And we've tried to do the right thing and adjust accordingly along the way. As the work group members have asked for additional time, or some of the subcommittees have really wanted to get in and work on this, and we've given them a lot of time to do that, which is greatly valued and appreciated.
So I did.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, I received a question, what, to ease the public's mind, what public information can we share? I mean, can we release the copy of the budget if people are asking for it? I mean, if that's helpful.
I'm certainly open to that. I think it would actually be really helpful to see where the budget has gone. The last couple of times Sam and I have visited, the rate at which we've been expending dollars doubled in January from the months prior. So September, October, November, December, we had a rate of around $15,000 to $20,000 a month, if I remember off the top of my head. And then that rate doubled in January and has continued through February. So a lot of that is because of the subcommittee work. A substantial amount of it is also due to the level of shuttle diplomacy and active mediation, which Sam has described before, which is it's just part of any process. When you get right down to the wire, it takes a lot of extra relationship building and support to help people get to agreement. And I feel like that work has been effective and helpful. I think we're getting to a point that we haven't been to for 50 years, and we're positioning ourselves to move forward in a very healthy, productive way going forward. But that has taken some time.
Sure. So if members of the public were interested in getting that information, what would be the best way for them to go about that?
Well, why don't we, Sam, I'm looking at you to concur, but I think there's no reason that we couldn't post invoices to the Benton County Tax Trash website. And if you'd like, we could bring them back to the board at our next check-in meeting with you.
I would encourage you to do that.
Yeah,
Thank
there's
you.
no reason not to do that.
I would appreciate that kind of original budget and then some the increases. This project reminds me a little of some of my home remodeling projects, and you have something in mind before you start, and then reality hits, and the scope of the project increases. And I think in this case, that's to all our benefit, that we're getting a lot more information than we had planned to originally. It's taken more time and money, and that to me, that's reasonable. And I'm looking forward, may not be quite the right term to this 500-page report, but that there will be good information in there that will guide us into the future.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate that. I just did a little quick math during the public comment period. We're looking at about 2 to 3% of the annual revenue from the landfill that we're investing in this process. So I know it seems like a lot of time, which it certainly is, and an investment of dollars, which it certainly is. But when you compare it to the scope of the size, the magnitude of the issue, and the magnitude of the revenues to Benton County, I still would encourage you to make this investment and to continue to invest in laying out the path forward. Our community needs it, deserves it, and I feel like we're doing the right thing. Thank you.
Okay. Do you need anything else from us at this time?
I don't think so. I'll make sure you know how to find the invoices and the
Okay.
original budget. And if you need more from us, please just ask.
Okay.
Okay.
And then at a later date, you will come back with a revised budget.
Yes, at no later than our next check-in with you, which is March 21st.
Okay.
If you'd like us to come back sooner, we can do that sooner.
Oh, that's fine with me. That's
Okay.
2 weeks from today.
Yes. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sam.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, next up is our consent calendar. 2 items there. Any?
You are going into the business. Right now.
Oh. Yes.
Okay, just for the record, for anybody on the virtual and who
Okay.
wants to make a note of this.
We
What
are.
do they say on the radio if you're keeping score at home?
Yep. So first order of business in our business meeting is the consent calendar.
Move approval of the consent calendar.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Consent calendar is approved. On our agenda, next up is the public hearings, but we cannot start them before 11 o'clock. Do we want to take a short break and come back and do a couple items of new business?
As long as CFO Krager is available.
Okay.
And I can check on that, Commissioner, during the break.
Okay. Let's try to get back at 10:20, a 10-minute break.
Recording stopped. Recording in progress.
Okay, we'll go ahead and get started with our business meeting, 7.1, new business. Resolution authorizing the financing of real and personal property and principal amount not to exceed 36 million and related matters. Good morning, Rick.
Good morning, Commissioner. Good morning, all the commissioners. Good to see all of you. So I guess you could say this is a bit of a, as we often say, a milestone moment here in the JSIP journey. So today I am presenting to you resolution number R2023-003, which is requesting the authorization to do financing for the purposes of funding the courthouse and district attorney's offices. So just as a way of background for all of you, I know that we've been having lots of conversations over the last 18 months in relation to this particular financing. And I think I've had several presentations in front of you in the past to provide you analysis to give you ideas and the thresholds that I thought was a prudent level of financing that we can afford. I think the most recent one was back in the summer, and things have pretty much stayed stable with our fund balance, and our financials for 2022 were more positive than what we had at least estimated. So that's a good sign. And so what that means is we're still in a very, very good place from a fund balance standpoint in terms of threshold of borrowing. You might recall my modeling that I had done was up to $36 million is pretty much what I had established, and we could still maintain a positive threshold of fund balance to operating expenses, stay within our financing policies. And so that is still maintained. In front of you today is a request to finance up to, and I want to be very clear, up to $36 million. I've had some questions about, well, there was in the JSIP cost projections that we have had and continued, it has a $34 million cost of borrowing as it relates. That is still our cost estimate that we have. However, I think you also remember there's still a lot of negotiation that has to happen with OJDE, particularly around site development costs. And because there's unknown, there may be situations where we have to have more money to pay our portion of the site development that becomes negotiated. But as you know, we were very conservative in this. So the reason I'm not asking for up to $36 million, again, so I don't have to keep coming back to you, but I would never, of course, exceed the threshold that I initially had recommended. So that is, again, the resolution that's in front of you here today. A couple other notes, just again, as it's outlined here, this would authorize myself and the county administrator to now be able to enter into and negotiate, execute a financing agreement. It does give us discretion on what that financing agreement looks like. Likely, it will be in the form of tax exempt bonds. That's the most efficient way of financing this size. But, certainly if there was some other financing tool out there, a bank loan or something that we found that could offer us a better rate, that option would be open. But I would say, and I think our underwriters would say the same thing, at this level, this amount, usually your tax exempt financing is going to be much more efficient and give you the best interest rate possible. This also authorizes the use of bond counsel. Our bond counsel is Hawkins Delfield Wood. They work closely with us in terms of advising as in relation to the actual financing agreement. Obviously, Vance will still be, and we'll keep him looped in, but we typically have a bond counsel that's part of our financing team that will help guide us, make sure that we stay in accordance to all the IRS rules and regulations as we move through this. In terms of the rest of my team, which isn't part of this, but just to make you aware, we are looking at DA Davison, our financial advisor, to continue on contract to provide the counsel as it related to pricing and guidance as it relates to our decision-making on the tool that we use. And then, of course, we using Piper Sandler as our underwriter lead on this. So it's similar to, I think it's the exact same team that was used for the financing that we did back in 2020 in relation to the acquisition of this building. So I think that's pretty much it. Again, with your authorization, we will then begin to proceed. Just to give you a quick timing, right now I'm scheduling, the schedule I put together calls for a June financing. That still is subject to change. Clearly, it will be dependent on how things are continuing to move along, where we're at with OJD agreement, but most importantly, where we're at with cash flows. Because we're starting to get to that point now where, okay, now we're getting into some real cost and I'm going to need the dollars. And we also know there's a mechanism that has to be put in place with OJD to get reimbursed for our portion. So sooner I can get that financing, the quicker I can kind of get all those things put in place. In terms of interest rates, I know you guys are always interested in where things are at. They have remained relatively stable, maybe even slightly down. With all of our estimates that we have done, we've put in 100 basis point cushion because we want to be protective. So far, I haven't really dipped into the last estimate. So it's likely if things were to stay stable, we could see lower than what we have forecasted in terms of debt service, which would be a good thing. That would just create more flexibility for us down the road. So I think that's about it. Like I said, with your approval, this enables me to start to move forward.
Nancy has a question.
Nancy?
Well, yeah, kind of a comment and a question. Thank you, Rick, for explaining the difference between the 34 million and the 36 million. That's good that we're very clear about that so that people know. If it does come to needing to go above the 34, will you come back and let us know that that is occurring? And by extension, the public and maybe some of our partners at the different cities within Benton County.
Right. So Commissioner Wise, thank you for the question. I think, through the authorization, I'll look at Vance. If I get this wrong, he'll throw something at me, but I think the authorization enables me to go up to 36 million and to do what we need to. However, in the spirit of transparency, I have no issues with keeping you informed as much as you would like in terms of how that changes. Again, the big driver, I think that will dictate that will be our negotiation and our funding agreements with OJD, particularly around that site development piece. And that will help us understand, okay, what financing do we need for our portion that needs to be covered. But yes, Nancy, I'm happy to come back as much as you like and give you an update. And as soon as I know that there is an increase in what we're forecasting, I can let you know.
Sure. Thank you. I really appreciate that.
So it's likely no later than June, would that be as far as going out?
Yeah, no later than June. I think if anything, I could see it potentially moving into August. I've read a few economic reports that might suggest it could be better to wait. But again, that's always a bit of a crapshoot in terms of timing. I'll obviously talk to our underwriters and what the best time to go would be. But yeah, no sooner than at this point. I think the other thing I'd like to do is try to get this done by June 30th so I don't have to deal with it on an internal loan type stand because financial reporting closes out. So that way it's one less thing we have to kind of account for internal loan wise.
I do have one question, and that is that at one point when I was speaking to a community member who works for one of our banks, he was saying that he was interested in some provision for local sale because they need to invest a certain portion of their own money locally. And are we still taking that into account?
Absolutely, Commissioner Oger. In fact, this was a conversation I just had recently with our financial advisor, because again, part of this resolution isn't, well, tax exempt is typically your better pricing. It's hard to beat. It leaves it open for us to explore. And I've already asked our financial advisor, can we explore if there's any maybe local investors? What they have told us is that typically, while that may be true when you get to a certain size, that and the term of that. So we're talking, this is, a 30-year bond. A lot of times people that do private placements are a little bit less willing to do it because that's a long time to be able to commit to perhaps, but we will absolutely explore. And bottom line is we want to get the best price.
Got it. Okay.
Well, and what I remember of the borrowing for this building is it seemed like we didn't do all the bonds the same. There were a couple different categories.
Yeah, you had a tax exempt and a taxable component to that. And part of that was, I remember all the details too, but it was sort of the ownership issue with Pfizer, be it was a portion of time. I can't remember the specifics of it, but it wasn't eligible under tax exempt debt because for a period of time, it was a private owner. So they had to do a taxable component, which is typically a little more expensive, but it just depends on where things stand in the market. I don't anticipate that need here. I would imagine it would all be tax exempt. There could be a premium that we end up using that, but it would just depend on the market.
I'd forgotten the wrinkle about the split ownership or at the time we did the Calipuya building. I'm remembering your chart from a few months back and different level, different amounts and so what you said earlier, that chart is still
it's a little better just because, like I said, 2022 was good. We continue to see fund balance grow. That's what we want. It's nice to see that our forecasting was good. And I always try to be a little conservative, as I told you. So you'd rather, be too low than too high and then have to adjust. So maybe a little bit of a bump up against that solid line, but yes, the trends have helped.
okay. Well, if anything changed, it's to our benefit.
And obviously if something were to go, you'd be the first to know, but certainly again, we're finishing our audit for fiscal year 2022 and it's positive growth.
Well, looking forward to more reports on just how things are looking and the timing, because I know, this is a big deal for Benton County and wanting to make our best guess when optimum time is. And there's, like I say, different factors. At some point, we need some money. And so we can't delay anymore but keep us posted on
absolutely
how things are looking out there.
I'm excited. Financing is always fun. You don't get to do it all very. I know. It's. I love it. I love it, and it's just.
That's why we hired you. Right?
Yeah, it's. I'm kind of giddy about this. So, a nerd.
Well, you're in the right spot. And any other questions?
Happy to make a motion.
Go ahead.
I move to approve resolution R 2023-003, authorizing a financing of real and personal property in a principal amount not to exceed 36 million.
Second.
All in favor of the motion, say aye.
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 Motion carries.
Thank you, commissioners. I'll keep you posted as we move forward.
Get to work.
All right.
Thanks, Rick.
I would like to recognize Rick before he goes too far. Once again, another milestone today and his guidance and shepherding our financing and everything Jason related from a funding perspective. He's just been a huge, incredible help. So Rick, appreciate that. And I know we're in good hands.
Thank you.
Well, and it's reassuring. You mentioned the same team that did the financing on this building is still in place, and I think we got good advice at that time. So that's reassuring.
One of the best in business, so I have absolutely.
Great. All right. Next up, 7.2, discussing a letter of support for Corvallis Housing First grant application to Oregon Housing and Community Services. Okay, you're going to lead the discussion, Joe.
That's correct. Good morning, commissioners. I'm representing this agenda item on behalf of Corvallis Housing First. I don't believe we have anybody online this morning that's joining us from Corvallis Housing First, so I'll just go ahead and kick this off. Andrea Myrie had contacted me a couple of weeks ago and informed me that they were applying to the Oregon Housing and Community Services Department in order to receive funding for 46 affordable housing units. And so they asked for a letter of support from the Board of Commissioners. I worked with them on that letter and I'm bringing it before you today. It's a letter of support just that will end up with their application for the Third Street Commons expansion. One of the noteworthy things about this is this particular project is immediately adjacent to our Avery complex for Benton County. And Corvallis Housing First was here a couple of months ago talking to us about one of the issues regarding our fuel tank. And so we've worked through that. And now this is kind of the next step in them pursuing these funds. And this would be a huge shot in the arm if they were able to achieve this. So I'm just coming before you today to ask you to approve this letter of support.
Any questions or comments?
I would just say that I went to a lovely small event on Friday night that was hosted by Corvallis Housing First, and they're very excited about this proposal. It provides the largest chunk of money towards this project, and they are very optimistic at this point about getting this funding because they went through the training college for community-based organizations that are putting forth proposals for permanent supportive housing. So they feel like they're in a really good place to get it at this time. So I strongly support putting this forward.
I guess my comment would be the original operation turnkey in the 24 units, and they have a nice track record of performing, and so this should be a relatively easy sell. That we've proven what we can do, and give us some funding, and we will triple the size of the operation. So that is a good thing. Did you have any question or comment, Nancy?
Just that I am supportive.
Yes. It's on page 2-3.
Yep. I would move to approve issuing a letter of support for Corvallis Housing First grant application to the Oregon Housing and Community Services Department to permanently fund 46 safe and affordable housing units at Third Street Commons.
Second.
All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries.
Thank you, Commissioners. We will forward this on to Andrea.
All right. Other than the public hearing, which we will start at 11 o'clock, is there any other business that we need to take care of now?
I'd like to just mention a couple things on an informational basis.
Okay.
One is that tonight is that LC Town Hall at the Hope Grange at Town Hall and dinner. I'm not going to be able to make it, but I just wanted to double check to see whether either of you might be able to make it out there tonight. I think we all have other obligations earlier in the evening.
I think that's correct. I'll check. But,
yeah. And to remind you that we do have a meeting informally dubbed the Commissioner's Corner in LC on April 17th. It's a Monday evening. And one or more of us can go, but I guess if more than one of us attends, we will have to notice it. So we'll just have to stay in touch about that.
Okay.
The other is that there's been a lot of discussion going on in the background about whether or not to bring forth an emergency declaration on homelessness to the board in order to formally submit that to the Department of Emergency Management of the state to qualify for part of the governor's pot of funds allocated for the housing homelessness emergency. And after much deliberation and discussion with other folks around the state, Our local staff here have recommended that we not pursue a declaration of homelessness emergency. I just wanted to let you all know, because that deadline and first review of those additional proposals to Department of Emergency Management happens on March 10th. So that's just right around the corner. But both the stringent timeline for for when the money would have to be used by and what it needed to be used for, and the fact that it would require participating in a regional activation, it made it cumbersome to think about applying for that main pot of funds. So we have access to the remainder of state funds, which will flow through Oregon Housing and Community Services and through the Rural Oregon Continuum of Care, and we will work with Community Services Consortium, Peggy McGuire, and access those funds, and hopefully do some coordination between Lynn, Benton, and Lincoln as we move forward.
And this is a potential workaround from the governor's declaration, and a modest number of counties were included in the emergency declaration, and we were one of 26 counties that were outside that.
Correct. We're in
Okay.
the Rural Oregon Continuum of Care, and so our numbers didn't meet their thresholds, their defined thresholds for homelessness emergency when taken as a 26 county average. And the legislature added 27 million and change to the governor's 130 original designation in order to cover the remainder of state that we fall into. And we don't know yet exactly how that 27 million will be apportioned, but we do know that there's something about like 800,000 that will go to Oregon Housing and Community Services to administer those funds, or to the rock. It's unclear to me exactly how all of that's going to shake out yet.
Okay. Appreciate the update. I guess I'd like to add, we had our first legislative breakfast in this room last Saturday, and it was well attended, and thanks staff for getting things set up, and we had a nice breakfast, and I think looking forward to the next several legislative breakfasts will be in this room, so stay tuned.
So I have a couple questions. I do have a question for Commissioner Ojo, but Commissioner Malone, since you brought up the legislative breakfast, I just wanted to discuss the possibility of having it have a virtual option next time. I personally think that would be ideal, and just was wondering what the concerns were, or why we didn't do it last time, or what other thoughts on that topic would be.
Okay, what I remember is the tradition that it's always been an in-person early Saturday morning event. It's a pretty good sized group that's spread out, so I'm not sure with our current technology how I guess I would have some concerns about the logistics of really having the virtual option be robust enough to be worthwhile.
The owl is designed for that sort of thing. In order, it swivels to hear and take a picture of or stream the person who's speaking. So I think it'd be possible. I know the sheriff has comment.
Thank you, Commissioner. I just wanted to add, I mean, when I was first appointed to sheriff, we did do virtual meetings, and I sure appreciated that in my transition. And now here we are 2 years later, and I would ask, the spring's a challenge for me. My son plays collegiate sports, and he's tied up on the weekend, and I'm going to follow my son. But on Saturday mornings, I'm able to do a virtual meeting if that's an option. So I would ask you to consider that as well.
Okay.
And, we do virtual meetings for our Benton County Talks Trash, which is a very large meeting. And I know the owls, if you use two of them, that can, they can work together and kind of overcome some of those issues.
Commissioners, I think we can absolutely accommodate a virtual option if that's what the board is preference is.
I would support a virtual option.
Well, let's check in and see what technology is would be required to make it practical.
And I support the virtual option as well.
Okay,
And then-
Commissioner, assuming that we can do it virtually, which I absolutely think we can, it's the same technology that we use on a regular basis with the OWL. So I don't think that will be an issue. But if we find out that there's no roadblocks technologically speaking, do you wish for us to move forward with scheduling virtual ones for the remaining meetings this spring?
I think so. The next one is April 1st, so we have 3 weeks to make sure that things are working and that we have what we need to provide the virtual option.
I will follow up with Maura and make sure that we provide that option and make people aware of it.
Okay.
And then if we're done with that topic, I just wanted to go back to the topic Commissioner Ojero mentioned. I guess, so you mentioned that staff recommended not supporting it. Have you been working with staff? Did staff ask you to bring that message forward? My recollection is we talked about it. I can't remember if it was at a goal setting or a work session. And I thought we did ask for more information from staff. So is it just because we have too tight of a timeline that we're not hearing from?
We had asked for a kind of a cost benefit analysis, and I did get an email message from Rebecca Taylor yesterday explaining what they had learned last Friday. It's a very tight timeline. We would have had to consider it today if we were going to do it. And I wanted to make sure that you both knew that staff have been doing a lot of due diligence in the background. I've been involved and also been trying to get further information from various sources. And the consensus of that group, Brian Lee, City County, CSC folks, was that it's not worthwhile to pursue an emergency declaration at this time.
Thank you. And I completely respect staff's opinion and trust them. I guess my feedback would be for our staff. I think that message would be good if we all received it versus just one commissioner.
Commissioner, I think my being gone on vacation was the issue here. There was an email sent yesterday, and I frankly didn't see it until 5 minutes before we were in this meeting.
Understood. Thank you.
Anything else?
I have one other thing.
Okay.
We decided to purchase a table for Celebrate Corvallis, and which is March 17th. And I think historically we have invited the sheriff and the district attorney. So I just wanted to bring that up and see if that is what we wanted to do this time around as well.
I don't see why we would do it any differently than we have in the past. The only challenge it presents is that if everyone brings spouses, I don't usually bring a spouse. That makes 9 at the table that is suitable for 8. But if you don't mind squeezing in a chair for me, I would be happy to be the extra person.
I will only require 1 chair.
Okay, then I think I would just support the usual approach.
Yep. Well, and should get relatively firm commitments who's going and what the count is, and then if there's space, extra space, figure out who else to invite so that we have a full table.
So should we ask staff to reach out to the sheriff and the district attorney?
We can certainly do that.
Yeah, it's a good time to get a head count and, because I remember several years back, the table was kind of empty, but, so it, let's see who's coming.
Commissioners, I'll have Nora and or one of our other staff members pull that together.
Great. All right, anything else? So I should. Well, we're finished with our business meeting.
Yep, I can take a recess until 11 o'clock and then we can reconvene and knock out the 2 public hearings.
But I can close the business meeting.
No,
No.
we just need to recess it. So
Recess the.
recess it, yes, sir.
I am recessing our business meeting till 11 o'clock, for at which time we will handle 2 public hearings.
Recording stopped.
ready to,
Recording in progress.
ready to resume here? Next up, public hearing number 1. And I will turn this over to Vance.
Thank you, Chair Malone. So this is the continuation for the ordinance to consider amending Benton County Code chapters 4, 5, and 6. Those are all election-related code sections. Last time when at the initial public hearing, Commissioner Ojero asked about adding gender to the list of the topics that would trigger a rejection based on bias or discrimination. James Morales and I took a look at the law. It is not a problem to add gender. We did add that word into the code provision in chapter 5. However, during that review of chapter 5, James Morales caught another aspect of our 2 sections of our code, both in chapter 5 and chapter 6, that are either redundant or unnecessary, depending on the section you look at. We attempted yesterday morning to quickly throw together a red line fix for those 2 inconsistencies, and it dawned on us pretty quickly that we probably should take a little bit more time, come back with a more accurate and thoughtful fix to the 2 elements that James identified. And as a result, the request that James and I have of the board is to simply let this particular ordinance die. You would adjourn the meeting with no action. James and I would then bring back all the changes that were contained in the in this particular public hearing agenda checklist, plus the 2 elements that we identified yesterday in chapter 5 and 6, so that you only do this once. Although sure seems like we see this fairly regularly. Hopefully we can get this taken care of and it'll be the last you see of chapter 4, 5, and 6 for a while. But the objective is to fix everything at once rather than piecemeal over several months. Chatting with James yesterday, I don't believe it should be any more than a month before this is on your agenda again with everything together.
Okay, Nancy, did you have a question?
Yes, sorry, Vance, you said adjourn the meeting. Did you mean close the public hearing?
I would either term, it doesn't make any difference. The bottom line is the public hearing would end with no action by the board, and that effectively kills the ordinance.
Fine by me.
Okay, and you said probably sometime in April, come back with the cleaned up version that we'll have time to review the changes and then have another first public hearing.
Yes, that's what we're targeting.
Sounds good.
Sounds good to me.
Okay, so I will adjourn the public hearing number 1 and see you back here in April.
Well, I'll be here every time, but definitely for this one in April. And just for Erica, would you please note that effectively kills that particular ordinance? And it will need to be reflected in our ordinance law that it died without action. Thank you.
Okay. Next up is public hearing number 2, and I will open the public hearing. And this is for deliberations only. We had a significant amount of testimony 2 weeks ago. And so now it's time for the board to deliberate.
Okay. Nancy can start.
Okay, Nancy?
Thank you, Chair. The conclusion that I have come to is that when it comes to the dwelling being built, that is housing, we're looking at the clear and objective standards for housing, which I initially thought only applied within an urban growth boundary, but I've learned that now has been applied outside of the urban growth boundary. My conclusion for the definition of the commercial farming. When it comes to our development code, we do not have a clear and objective definition for commercial farming. And so therefore, I believe we need to accept or approve the appeal and overturn the planning commission's decision.
I concur with that statement. I don't believe that we have a clear and objective standard, and I would like to see us develop one. But at this time, I also would support upholding the appeal.
And I'm happy to make a motion and then maybe we
I
can.
would.
I would like.
Or did I use the wrong language?
Just to be clear, uphold the appeal would be to grant the application and overturn the planning commission.
Yes.
Okay, just
Okay, I am in favor of supporting the planning commission and our staff. I don't think from what I've seen that this operation qualifies as a commercial farming operation. There was one Schedule F that had $3,300 worth of gross income. There was only 1 year mentioned. I would have liked to have seen several Schedule Fs to see what the trend was, because the farm plan that was submitted was well developed, but there is no consequence if that's not followed through on. And so I'm concerned about the building houses in EFU zones. And so like I say, it's less than 80 acres, considerably less than $80,000 of gross income. And from my reading of the materials submitted, doesn't qualify as a commercial farming enterprise. So.
You know, if we want to state our rationale for the record, I would say that those safe harbor criteria are not acknowledged in our code. They are not Benton County criteria. We have been inconsistent in applying our own code. And, you know, if in one case we accept a less than 80 acre parcel and no current income stream yet for a hazelnut orchard, and an off-farm income that also contributes to that farm, that total household income, without asking any question about what that income is or how much it is or whatever. But in this case, we do, and we nitpick it just where the income is coming from to support the farm. I'm not comfortable with that. I'm also, you know, overall, in the larger philosophical scheme of things, uncomfortable with a code that pushes all farms to be 80 acres or larger and to be very large mainstream commercial farms and not be sustainable farms. If we used this definition everywhere across the county, our largest organic farms here in the county wouldn't exist. And that, you know, is in their startup phase, they would not have gotten off the ground. I have to say that I'm very strongly in support of the approach to farming that is being taken, and it's not a part of the criteria. I just want to state it for the record, using rotational grazing and active pasture management is something that I think we should be encouraging. And so philosophically, I find myself aligned. That's not why I'm casting my vote to uphold the appeal, I don't believe we have the clear and objective standards. To be clear about that. But as we move forward to change our code, I think we need to have some discussions about what we want to see in terms of agriculture here in the county and how we can do that within the statewide land use framework to the best of our ability.
Nancy?
Thank you. I very much agree with what Commissioner Ojero said. And I just, for the record, I do not want to get to a place where we are building a bunch of housing or inappropriate housing in our resource zones. I do want to protect rural character. Density goes in the cities, not in the county, not in the unincorporated area. But in this case, we just do not have clear and objective standards. So we need to change that, which we can talk about after the vote. And I'm happy to make a motion. I move to, let's see, based on the evidence in the record and upon hearing testimony on the issue, I move to approve the applicant's appeal, thereby thereby overturning the original notice of decision on file number LU-22-023.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Nay. All right, motion carries. You said you wanted further discussion?
Sure. I just think the board should provide some direction to staff to begin the process of amending this portion of our code. And so that we do have clear and objective standards for the future. And then kind of a bigger piece of that, it would be nice if this is probably a heavier lift, but to go through and see what other places in our code we are missing clear and objective standards. Adding that to the to-do list would be good too.
Do you want a formal motion to approve that our community development staff move to develop clear and objective standards with respect to this element of our code?
I don't know. What does staff think?
If you wish to go that direction, I would suggest you close the public hearing and resume this particular conversation within the context of your regular meeting agenda.
Okay, I will close public hearing number 2 and resume our board business meeting. So like my two colleagues have both said need for clarity in our code, and I would definitely agree with that so we do have clear standards going forward.
Thank you, commissioners, for the discussion, and just want to say this is a difficult issue to try to parse out and understand. I think where you've landed today is in a good place in that we haven't been consistent in the way that we've applied the law in the past, and the law has changed recently to require clear and objective standards for the setting of housing in resource zones, and that is a big shift for counties across the state. So having said that, I heard two things that would be helpful to you. One is clear and objective standards for the siting of farm help dwellings in resource zones. And then I heard a second request for clarity in our development code across the code. I strongly support both of those. And I also don't know quite where we're going to find the staff capacity to take those on. So what I would ask for is a little bit of time to come back to you with a proposal, I think, to address these in the order that you've raised them, which is we need some clear and objective standards for siting homes and resource zones in Benton County. Whether that applies just to farm help dwellings or accessory dwellings more broadly, or maybe just dwellings even more broadly, I would like a chance to think that through just a little bit and to advise you or to bring forward a proposal. Regarding the development code, I haven't met anybody yet in Benton County who feels like our development code is as clear and objective as they would like it to be. which is a challenge for property owners, for members of the public, and for our own staff to administer. And that it's a recognition that it's time to get some help with that. We may have resources in our budget to get some outside help immediately. And I'd like a chance to look at that as well and see if we think that's something we address either in this budget or in the coming budget. But I just want to support where your instincts are in the fact that this is something we need to address. I hope that helps.
I think that coming back with a staff recommendation would be excellent. Would appreciate that.
How quickly would you like those two
Commissioner
recommendations?
Wise.
Oh, I'll just add that, yes, this is important, but we have to view this ask in the greater picture of all of the asks that we have of community development right now. So, Darren, for me, if you need some time to think about like a timeline, or if, I mean, I'm open to what works for staff is what I'm saying.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Wise. I want to be responsive in part because I think we want to get ahead of this one. I think we're already behind on this one, and I think we don't want to get further behind.
Yes, and I know that the issue of accessory dwelling units in rural has also been on our back burner for a while, so we need to deal with that.
Yeah, this is a really big topic. There are a lot of financial pressures and frankly, just survival pressures on people to find a place to live in our community. And that means that oftentimes the affordable option is an RV or a trailer or a room in a shop or something out in our resource lands. And that's understandable. I mean, my heart goes out to people who are trying to find a place to live and survive and stay in our community. At the same time, we only have a finite supply of ag and forest land. And as we look into the future and the economic and climate uncertainty that we're all facing and the water uncertainty, I think we need to think really carefully about how we manage our landscapes for those other purposes. So this is not an easy one to tackle, and yet we must address it. And I think sooner is better. Okay.
I guess I'll feel comfortable having you come back as soon as practical. Let us know what the plan is, and then I assume at that point maybe a motion would be in order.
Okay, will do. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. Anything else for the good of the order?
Just note, Darren, you'll need to bring back, and Inga, you need to bring back an order for that memorialize the approval of the application.
Yes.
Okay, yep. So because this is a quasi judicial land use hearing, we need an order memorializing your decision. That will, as Darren just said, be back on your agenda the 21st. Erica, it is not a public hearing. It's just a regular agenda item.
That we need to approve on the 21st.
Yes, it will contain the findings of fact, conclusions of law.
Okay. All right, anything else? Hearing none, meeting adjourned.